Chapter 16. Operation Pooper S. Scooper. It was twilight when the three of them, 5 including Gerald and Ian, reached Delta House. Every light was on in every window. Each one provided a glimpse of the students inside. It was like looking into a dollhouse, if the dolls were frat boys in polos and chinos and sorority girls in miniskirts and tube tops. Liam did not like being back, much less going right up the front walk. He was doubly disgusted to see the ground littered afresh with a new layering of disposable cups and crushed beer cans. The evidence of their trash pickup from earlier in the week had been completely erased. It was as if they had never been there. Liam was deeply grateful, however, for their disguises, especially as they rolled the wagon of DJ equipment past the frat boys on the front lawn. The brothers snapped their heads around from their game of cornhole to smile and nod at Mitchell as he sashayed past. "Hey, princess. What's up, Leia? Want to play some cornhole?" Liam wasn't sure if these greetings were in earnest or ironic. He was sure they grossed him out. He made a mental note to remind Mitchell that Princess Leia was a Rebel Alliance general and not a sashaying type. They didn't need the attention. But it would have to wait, as when the brothers saw Darth Jax or Max Spins, they broke out into cheers. "Woohoo! Max Spins is in the house! Yeah, Max Spins!" Liam cringed. So much for inconspicuous. As the brothers whooped it up, Max Spins gave them a silent head nod. Liam came up alongside Jax. "Jax, you know these guys?" "No, but they know Max Spins." "You've DJ'd here before?" "Once or twice." "Really? For these guys?" "It's my side hustle. I get to practice and they pay well. Mommy and Daddy's money, of course. And hey, a girl's gotta eat," Jack said, nudging him. "Wait, you said a girl, so you—" Jax punched him in the arm, much harder than a girl might be expected to. "It's an expression, dummy. Don't go pigeonholing me. I'm not choosing sides in the gender wars just yet." "Oh, okay." Mitchell was struggling to carry one of the speakers from the wagon up the steps of the house. "Leia, my daughter," Jack said in a faux Vader voice. Mitchell snickered. "You're not my father, you purple glitter-bombed Sith." "Oh my God," Liam said, putting his hand to his forehead, forgetting he had the Captain Phasma helmet on until he jostled it out of place. It was a reminder that he looked as ridiculous as the others, and he blinded himself in the process. As Liam tried to shift the helmet and realign the eye sockets, Mitchell was protesting. "I'm getting into character. You might try it, Captain Phasma." "I can't even—" "Mitchell, maybe this is a good time, then, to consider whether or not the General of the Rebel Alliance channels Rambo a bit more than RuPaul when she walks." "Sorry, it's just the gown is so liberating." "Yeah, you didn't fail to mention that already." "But you're right, Liam. General Organa is a badass. Good character note." Liam exhaled a small sigh of relief. Darth Jax spoke up next. "Well, now that we have that sorted, Princess Leia, General Organa. General Organa, as I was saying, you don't need to carry that stuff. Watch this." Jax turned and snapped their fingers. The frat brothers playing cornhole stopped their game and looked over. Jax Vader pointed at them, the DJ gear, then the front steps. The brothers dropped their beanbags and ran over. "Yes, Lord Vader." As they began to carry the gear inside, now obedient servants, Mitchell marveled aloud, "Nice! The Force is strong with Jax Vader." "Straight," Jax Vader said, giving a high five to Mitchell Leia, followed through by mirrored finger gun salutes, which morphed to a flappy bird and hunter move wherein Jax, the hunter, shot down the bird, Mitchell, whose hand spiraled downward to the ground only for Jax to level out their hand to catch the injured bird in a low 5. They closed with a double front-back duster handoff, punctuated by a standard dap, no blowing it up needed. It would have been anticlimactic at that point. "Are you two for real?" Liam asked. "You gotta know how to work the system in your favor. First-year pledges are good for carrying stuff. They always want to prove themselves." "Right." In a lower voice, Jax Vader added, Mitchell, you will do the talking for me. DJ Max spins doesn't speak? Liam asked. Max spins lets the music talk for him. Wait, him? Darth Jax turned a dark stare on Liam, who threw up his hands to fend off another punch. Sorry. I know it's just an expression. You're not choosing sides. Good. You are learning, young Liam Skywalker. I thought I was Captain Phasma. Mitchell was snapping his fingers, calling for one of the first-year pledges to hurry up. Chop chop, you scruffy-looking nerf herders! See? He's warming to his role. Jax laughed from within their helmet. Liam grabbed a woofer and followed Jax up the stairs as they made a grand entrance to cheers and applause. Delta boys and row girls called out, Max Spins in the house! Jax swung open their arms, more Megan Rapinoe than Sith Lord. They set up in the front room, which had been cleared of furniture. The couches and chairs were flush against the bookcases, which were filled not with books, but with sports memorabilia and action figures. Football helmets from the university team, as well as a few NFL teams, sat next to crew trophies, signed baseballs, and collector's edition figurines from various franchises. Star Wars, Marvel, DC, and Lord of the Rings were all well represented. Batman and Iron Man were posed, squaring off in a DC Marvel billionaire grudge match. Wonder Woman and Black Widow had been posed together as well, but it looked less like fighting and more like making out. Of course, Jack said, shaking their head at the way the two women had been positioned. A gigantic stone fireplace took up the south wall. 3 dozen polished wooden paddles fanned out over the hearth. Each was carved with the Frat's Greek letters. On one end of the mantel was a replica of Michelangelo's David in miniature. He was positioned in such a way to be looking over his shoulder at a demure statue of Venus, in the style of Botticelli's Birth of Venus, her hair and hands positioned as if to cover herself from David's leering glare. That seems appropriate, Liam thought, as he watched a real-life dance of pursuit and evasion playing out among the early arrivals to the party. The frat boys alternated between laughing overly loud among themselves and leering at the sorority girls, who, for now, kept to their own tight bunches, checking their phones, taking selfies, or helping themselves to cups of punch or beer. The frat boys continued to fortify themselves with liquid courage, too, filling their solo cups and refilling them before they approached the girls with their masculine swagger on full display. The wood floor was scuffed and stained from years of keggers and all the accompanying spills, stains, and gouges that came with generations of parties. But despite the wear and tear, the boards had been buffed as close to a reflective shine as possible. Buffed, Liam imagined, by more eager first-year pledges. With only silent gestures from Max Spins and more explicit directions from General Leia Organa Mitchell, the sound system was soon set up. As Jax opened their laptop and queued up the playlists, Mitchell and Liam got the laser globe and smoke machines in place and plugged in. Liam noticed their Yoda statue had already gone missing from the wagon. I hope Gerald isn't off doing something stupid, Liam said. Don't worry, Mitchell whispered. Pooper S. Scooper is foolproof. Maybe I'd be more inclined to believe you if you'd chosen a different name than Operation Pooper S. Scooper. Their conversation was cut short by a series of loud booms. Mitchell jumped. Liam, too. The noise was not from the speakers, but from the arrival of fresh kegs. Full and heavy, they rumbled across the floor, pushed by the very pledges Liam guessed had shined and buffed the boards. Jax had been right. Flushed and sweaty, these first years were eager to please. They took to their duties with willing smiles, even as their more senior line brothers barked out directions with the flair of drill sergeants. Liam was impressed and creeped out at once. The pledges set out folding tables with bowls of chips, boxes of pizza, and towers of the ubiquitous red Solo cups. Still, the pledges waited to eat until their line brothers had helped themselves first. By the time the first years had completed their duties, Max Spin's fog machine was on full blast, burying the floor under a knee-high layer of fog right out of Dagobah. With a flash, the laser globe pulsed like a supernova, blinding everyone in the room and out on the lawn. The brilliance faded into a spinning array of colored laser lights, lacing through the air. It was a rainbow pulsar come to rest in their very midst. DJ Max Spins had arrived. The speakers awoke as DJ Max Spins let the music flow, the beats blasting with such force that the entire house vibrated, foundation to ceiling. The stacks of solo cups wobbled, the junk on the shelves and the paddles on the wall rattled, ripples spread in the punch bowl. Additional laser lights positioned around the spin table blazed on, rotating through a profusion of colors. Liam had never used hallucinogens, but he was certain it had to be like this. His eyes were saturated with so many distinct but blending hues that, in that moment, even that well-worn, overly crowded room was nothing short of beautiful. The crowd erupted in cries of joy, but Liam could only tell by the way they raised their arms and opened their mouths, as the speakers drowned out the noise of their voices. There was no sound but Max Spin's sound. Jax's performance was overpowering. Max Spins answered the dancers' shouts with an all-too-cool-for-school head nod from behind the DJ deck before breaking into a trance-like state of bopping from side to side, foot to foot. Jax moved with the rhythm. The students moved with the rhythm. It rose up from the floor into Liam's body as if the very core of the earth was throbbing in resounding approval of the rhythm. Without consciously willing it, Liam realized his own leg was bouncing. One hand slapped his thigh and the other snapped. The beat was in him. It was pure wizardry. Even Liam was moving now, and he hated dancing. Damn, Jax knows how to set a hook. But something else was going on that Liam couldn't quite understand. "Those are some powerful speakers," he said, feeling suddenly disoriented. "But why do I feel a little wobbly?" "Oh yeah, Jax and I have modified them with ultra-low-frequency rotary woofers," Mitchell explained. "If there were whales, elephants, or giraffes here, they might actually hear it. The students can't hear it, but they can feel it. Some studies have linked this type of infrasound to a feeling of awe, transcendence, even supernatural experiences. It's one of the reasons DJ Max Spins is so popular." Liam remembered his walk with Jax to the Delta house 2 days before, when Jax had mentioned their varied interests, in everything from sociology and art to applied wave mechanics and laser interferometry. Looks like this is how they bring it all together. "So basically, Mitchell, you and Jax are doing an experiment on all these Greek kids." "Hey, this is no experiment, man," Mitchell said, his voice rising slightly. "Jax would say this is just entertainment. It's art." Liam proceeded to throw up what Liam imagined was intended as some hand page for art. "Mitchell, you didn't just stack at me, did you?" "Haters gonna hate! Holla!" Mitchell said, more to himself as he and Jax exchanged the sign across the room. "Please, just don't." Fine, Mitchell said. "Just trying to represent the artists in the house." Nope, we are not going to do that." Liam cut him off, growing desperate for a diversion. "Mitchell, Jax also mentioned to me their interest in applied wave mechanics and laser interferometry." He nodded toward the DJ tables. "That setup seems to be more than just your average mixed tables and strobes." "There are some prototypes we've worked on, but hey, this is just field research, Liam. We don't need the IRB chasing us down." "Your secret is safe with me. Don't worry. They seem like they're consenting and having fun," Liam said, backing up as the dance floor flooded with more and more dancers. "No secret. We're entertainers. Wink, wink," Mitchell said, adding a superfluous nudge of the elbow as well as actual winks. The chaos and noise brought even more brothers flocking into the room from the lawn and the upper floors. These latest additions weren't dancing just yet, but they lined up at the tables and grabbed pizza slices and chips by the handful, as if to carbo load themselves for the night ahead. Liam and Mitchell took in the spectacle of it all. The fog, the shaking floorboards, the vibrations in their own chests. The noise announced the start of the party to all of Frat Row and drew more students from the neighboring houses. The newcomers began to crowd the sidewalk and the front door. Liam had heard the noise of these frat parties many times before, not to mention read stories of them getting out of hand in the local newspapers, but to be at one was something completely different. And at the center of it all was their friend, a skinny Darth Vader in a white t-shirt set aglow with black lights, wearing that oversized, glittering helmet, bouncing and thrashing with the beat, flanked by sound panels and laptop screens. Max Spins, a conductor for an orchestra of smoky, laser-lit chaos. "Sort of wild," Mitchell said. Liam agreed, but he was out of his own adjectives to further describe it. "I guess it's been what I've been missing out on," he said. Liam watched as a frat brother did a handstand on a keg, two compatriots holding him up by the legs while a fourth shoved the end of the beer dispenser into the acrobatic student's mouth. The upside-down brother began to drink, fighting gravity and his own gag reflex, getting in a respectable series of swallows before the beer began to foam out of his mouth and nose, but even then the others did not lower him down. "Drink, drink, drink," the other brothers chanted, shaking their red cups and spilling beer. The kid on the keg did his best to oblige, even as his face shaded to red and his cheeks bulged with rushing blood and the flow of beer. More row sisters arrived just then, streaming in through the doorway, a herd of straight-haired girls in short skirts and low-slung tops, each wearing glitter-infused eyeshadow. "It's a bit like the herd effect among zebras," Mitchell said, having slipped into a full-on David Attenborough nature documentary mode and oblivious to the pair of frat brothers now sizing him up and down in his own skirt. Liam inched closer protectively. "What do you mean?" Liam said, trying to calculate the level of bravura the two boys had worked themselves up to and worried a pass was imminent. "Look at the group of row girls clustered together like that. They all look the same. You can't tell where one starts and the other begins," Mitchell observed. "In the wild, it would have the effect of confusing carnivorous predators." "Yeah, but I don't know how much it protects them from predation here," Liam said. Liam had no trouble himself picking out Jane Collingwood, Samantha Carlyle, and Chelsea Sidwell. They were leading at the head of the pack of row girls, the alpha females. Even in his Captain Phasma helmet, Liam instinctively slouched down, his shoulders inching close to his ears, hoping to be unnoticeable. To his relief, Jane was distracted by good old Troy Thurston himself, whose voice cut through the rising din to announce himself. "What's up, Delta boys and row ladies?" Troy was making his entrance from the opposite side of the room. He was with Blaze, Chad Dilworth, and other more junior brothers, who scuttled behind like members of a political entourage. The vulnerability and hurt Liam and Jax had glimpsed in Troy 2 days before was gone. It was replaced now by the gracious and bloviating confidence of a host. "Well, if it isn't the lacrostitutes," Troy announced, laying eyes on Jane and her friends, his perfect white teeth flashing. He opened his arms wide before clapping his hands and rubbing them together. Jane crossed the room, pushing past a few brothers who had already begun to dance up to row girls. She marched up to Troy, her expression venom. Liam thought she would slap Troy across the face. Jane wound up as if she were about to, but her hand stopped. She opted instead to point her finger, dagger-like, in Troy's face. "Damn it, Troy! You know I hate it when you call us that. It's rude and objectifying." Mitchell and Liam turned to each other. Maybe this party was going to veer off into disaster before it even started. They'd never get the chance to sneak downstairs then. Troy responded, his smirk melting into shameful puppy dog, complete with a pouty lip. "I'm sorry, babe. You know I'm just kidding. You girls are lady ladies." Troy's smirk undermined his sincerity, but the ostentatious kiss he planted on Jane's cheek placated her. Jane's scowl melted into giggles as Troy closed and whispered something in her ear. Whatever he said, it worked. Maybe Troy's attention had been what Jane had wanted all along. Jane tilted her head, coquettish. She struck Troy's chest playfully. He encircled her waist with his arms. Jane started to sway with the beat of the music, turning her back to him and pressing her hips into Troy's crotch. "I don't understand girls," Liam said. Me neither, Mitchell said, despite being dressed convincingly as one. Turn that music up, Troy yelled out. Max spins obliged, cranking up the volume to a decibel level that Liam was certain would cause long-term hearing loss, a series of false positives for sine waves in the geology department, and utter confusion for any nearby whales, elephants, or giraffes. Another frat boy tipped off a keg and fell flat on his back, a cloud of fog scattering with his landing. Beer foamed out of his mouth. One of his eager brothers rushed over, not to help him up, but to step over the body and take his own turn on the vacated keg. Liam wondered if it was a pledge requirement to try at least one keg stand. The room felt close, crowded, and hot. When the sea of bodies parted, Max Spins came into view. A dancing Darth Jax executed a double-barrel ray gun turned cross your heart, followed by jazz hands sparkle fade to make it rain move, in the direction of Liam and Mitchell. That's the signal, Mitchell said, tugging on Liam's sleeve. At the same moment, Gerald apparated between them, his ears folded back from the noise. Oh my, like a bacchanal of old. Haven't seen something like this since the fertility festival on Cirrus 9. Or last Wednesday, Liam said, thinking of the seance with the flying and floating students. Did you see Jax give the signal? Indeed, and I know just where we're going, Gerald said. I did some advance reconnaissance. Excellent, Mitchell said. Recon! They turned, only to find their way blocked. Cool Yoda, one of the frat boys who had been creeping on Leia Mitchell said. His buddy was close behind, wearing a vacant, buzzed smile. Liam cringed, wishing he had brought pepper spray, a cattle prod, or both. But Gerald was on it, looking up to the two frat boys and saying in a perfect Yoda voice, The Leia you are looking for, this one is not. Oh man. Yeah, you're totally right. She's not. They each said it in glazed, monotone unity. They spun on their heels, turning an about face, then marched off to become lost in the crowd. I can't believe I just saw that, Liam said. That was so awesome! Mitchell was jumping up and down, like a real Jedi mind trick. Stick with me, boys. I'll show you things. Gerald snapped his fingers in a tight W formation. He followed it up with a circle and finished with a quick triple snap Z flourish. It was a display worthy of Mitchell and Jax. Mitchell imitated the snap over his shoulder to Liam before hurrying after Gerald, his Princess Leia sachet returning, and belting out what Liam suspected were the words to Milkshake. You're not worried about being seen? Liam hurried after them. You're a bit out of the ordinary, Gerald. That Yoda costume is almost too good. Me? I'm the least noteworthy thing here, Gerald said. He disappeared down an adjacent hall. The demon knew exactly where he was going. Mitchell hiked up the hem of his gown in order to run. Liam ran too, hoping that Gerald's comment was in reference to the frat brothers and sorority sisters undulating on the dance floor, DJ Max Spins in all their purple glitter glory, or Mitchell's ridiculous character work. And definitely not a warning in regard to what might be waiting in the basement. Chapter 17. Fear of Wendigo. They moved down the hall into the rear of the frat house. Liam felt a little better when he grabbed one of the many Delta Beta Alpha paddles off the wall. He tested its weight with a short swing, then held it up to his shoulder, a cricket player stepping up to bat. Mitchell looked at him with surprise. What? Liam said. I'm protecting myself. They have dozens of these. They're not going to notice one missing. Mitchell must have agreed. He took the next one they passed. Liam was surprised how far back the building went. The hall turned at a right angle at the corner of the house and led into a wood-paneled study with rows of green-shaded legal lamps. Shelves of leather-bound books lined the walls. The room had the appearance of a private library, although Liam suspected it was more for show, something to convince school officials that frat boys could be studious too. A brass statue of a naked young woman with just on the edge of believable breasts was placed on a marble pedestal. The pedestal was positioned between ceiling-to-floor windows that opened onto the backyard. The girl was kneeling, her hair in rope-like braids on either shoulder, a towel folded across her lap. A plaque on the pedestal read, "Nymph bathing beside a stream." Liam imagined that this was what passed for tasteful in the frat house. Gerald flapped over to the door on the far side of the room and tried its handle with his toenail, grimacing as if towing a dead rat. "Is that it?" Liam asked, coming up alongside him. "The door downstairs?" "It is. It leads to the basement. The locking mechanism is interesting," the demon said, waving his hand over the knob and giving it the lightest of taps with the tip of a talon, shivering from another brush with earth metal elements. "Can you open it?" "Not easily. There are some enchantments against magically forcing it. We'll have to do this manually." "But who would have the key? Troy? One of his brothers?" Liam looked to Gerald. The demon shrugged. "There might be a switch or secret lever of some sort," Gerald volunteered. "Maybe a book?" Liam said, turning to the bookshelves. "Like in the movies." "Maybe," Gerald said, floating up to the shelves to study the book's spines. He had not even touched a single one when the lock on the door made a series of clicking noises, followed by the knob turning. The door creaked open. Liam felt a cold draft of air spill out on his feet from the darkness beyond. "Gerald, it's open. What did you do?" "Nothing," the demon said, flapping backward. "Mitchell, did you—" "Oh." Liam looked back to a wide-eyed Mitchell who was standing in front of the bronze nymph statue. His face was bright red as he retracted his hand from the nymph's breasts. Gerald made some comment about adolescent human males and their collective obsession with mammary glands before floating toward the stairwell. Liam didn't see a light switch, so he pulled out his phone. "Ian, flashlight, please." Ian responded, if not in words, in action, a beam of light shining out from the phone's flash. Liam was glad to know the AI was there, even if saying nothing. Mitchell shuffled up behind them. "I thought the statue might have a switch. That was why Save it," Liam said. "And don't you criticize me for using boobs as the password on my workshop, ever." "Well, there is an evolutionary explanation." "Shh, both of you." Gerald hushed them, his wings doing a slow flap as he descended the stairwell, the beam of Liam's light passing over the demon's spiky back and down the wooden stairs. They made their way down. The air at the bottom of the stairs was cold, almost as if someone had left open a walk-in freezer. The icy air pooled up to knee level. Mitchell finally found a light switch and clicked it on. A series of fixtures, fashioned like antique candelabrums, lit up along the wall. Each flickered with flame-style LED lights. "Interesting decorating choices," Mitchell commented. "A little bit opera house, a little bit 19th century mortuary." "These are real flagstones down here," Liam said, tapping the floor with his foot. "These buildings go back to colonial times, when the university was founded," Mitchell explained. "I heard that some of the old buildings' foundations are literally made with the ballast rock from scuttled slave ships." "That's not something they mentioned in the campus tour," Liam said. "This place feels old," Gerald said. "For this part of the world, that is." "The room we saw was on the north side," Liam said, trying to make out a sense of direction. He was reluctant to spend any more time in this basement than was necessary. He wanted to find the room, get the books, and get out. "I think that's this way," Mitchell said, pointing down another dark corridor. He went to flick another switch, but this time Gerald stopped him. The demon's nose was twitching. "Wait, I smell something, or someone. Better we not alert them to our presence." Despite the cold, Liam had to wipe sweat from his temples. He smelled nothing but pledge floor polish, Axe body spray, and maybe a bit of mothballs and mildew. He clicked off the phone light, pocketed it, and used both hands to hold up the paddle. The boys followed Gerald as he continued down the hall, their way lit only by the light from the corridor they had just left. Black, empty doorways passed to their right. Most were open, but without light, the rooms were lost in shadow. Gerald was headed for a set of double doors at the far end of the hall. Liam remembered the meeting room he and Jax had seen had just such a set of doors. He swallowed. They were close. Gerald's nose continued to sniff and twitch. He even stilled his wings, setting himself down on the floor, walking with slow, cautious steps. The demon balanced on the pads of his feet, his toes lifted so as not to rasp his claws on the floor. The three of them moved so slowly that Liam's eyes had time to adjust to the dark. He could see the doors ahead were painted in dragon scale green with gold trim. The brass knobs were emblazoned with the chevrons of the Frat and their motto in Latin. The doors must not have been locked or enchanted because Gerald didn't hesitate to reach up for the knobs. But just then, a lot of things happened. Liam heard a hiss and a scraping sound like hooves across flagstones. This was followed by a bestial snort, as if from a large animal. Was there a horse stable down here? Liam caught a series of strange scents, something like an odor he associated with wild animals, but also meat. Fresh meat, like at a butcher's, as well as rotting meat. The latter odor brought to mind the time he came across a putrefying deer carcass on the side of the road. When he looked into the adjacent doorway, Liam was certain he caught the glow of two menacing red eyes and a rack of spiky horns, antlers even, rising up toward the ceiling, looming over them. But that was all Liam saw. The next moment, everything around him had gone black. His whole body felt twisted, swirled and sucked, as if down a drain and squeezed through a pipe full of screams, only to pop back into existence in a darker, closed space. Once he had rematerialized, Liam fought back a familiar urge to vomit. Liam knew they had been transported by Gerald, but this time across a much shorter distance. He guessed that was why the nausea was not as overpowering this time. But still, Mitchell, who had apparated alongside him and not been teleported before, began to gag. Even as Liam covered Mitchell's mouth to signal to him to hold it in, or else, he could not help a bilious burp of his own. Trapped as he was inside his own Captain Phasma helmet, Liam's burp was close to unbearable to breathe back in. Oh God, Liam thought, his eyes crossing with the dizzying effort to overcome an involuntary reflex, evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to evacuate his own gastrointestinal tract of spoiled food or infection. For now, Liam was able to prevail over evolution. Mitchell too, but just barely. By the feel of the cold air, the unbroken darkness, and the sound of Gerald's voice, Liam knew the demon had transported them a distance of only a few feet. Liam lifted his helmet for fresh air and sucked in the potent scent of disinfectant, lemon-scented wood polish, and mothballs. They were in a broom closet, mere steps away from where they had just stood. Liam hadn't even seen the closet in the dark of the hallway, distracted as he had been by the double doors to the occult room, not to mention the menacing red eyes and the bestial sounds and smells. The doors of the broom closet were louvered, so Liam and Mitchell could peer through the slats to see Gerald turning to whatever was moving about in that other room. The animal caterwauling continued. Liam wished that something more than a louvered closet door stood between them and whatever was lurching into the hallway. The pair of red eyes blinked a few times, as if, whatever the creature was, it was just waking from slumber. Another snort followed, this one louder. The eyes continued to rise until the creature stood at an intimidating height, way taller than a human. Something like a set of antlers was definitely scraping against the ceiling now. The eyes neared, stopping just below the top of the doorframe. "Gerald," came a deep growl. Liam felt Mitchell stiffen beside him. The boys wrapped their arms around each other like a couple at a scary movie. Liam felt a little ridiculous and a lot scared. "Wendell!" Gerald's tone was affable, if strained. He craned his neck, looking straight up into the top of the doorway. He sounded as if he had just bumped into an acquaintance from work in a supermarket aisle and forced a laugh. "Well, isn't this a surprise? A bit far south for Wendigo, aren't you? Certainly didn't expect to see you here, no sir, but a delightful surprise. Long time. How long has it been, Wendell?" The creature stepped out of the next room, ducking below the doorframe to angle the rack of murderous-looking antlers through. He wasn't completely successful. One of the dagger-sharp points stabbed at the doorframe. It shattered the wood and sent down a rain of splinters. The slivers landed next to 2 hooved feet. The creature's arms were overly long, hanging down to his knees. Each hand was tipped with long red needles for claws, any one as long as Gerald was tall. They wrapped on the door frame like dangling carpenter nails. But the head was the most hideous. As the Wendigo came into the dim light of the hall, Liam could see a skull mostly free of flesh, shaped like the head of a buck but with rows of long white teeth that belonged to a carnivore. Mitchell was shaking. Liam was shaking. The Wendigo let out a long hissing breath. The smell of carrion flooded through the slats of the closet door, bringing fresh waves of nausea. Gerald cleared his throat, as if he too was suffering from the odor, or maybe he was just trying to cover for Liam's and Mitchell's own stifled gags. Mitchell was beginning to retch, but covered his mouth with both hands. The Wendigo was taking deep, exploratory sniffs of the air. Could he smell them? Could he hear them? As the monster stalked into the center of the hallway, Gerald was intent on distracting Wendell with conversation. He dipped and flapped about, clearing out of the Wendigo's way only at the last minute. It must have been at Hellion Horde a few decades back, or the Incubus Invitational, but that was over a century ago. My, time does fly. Funny seeing you here too, Gerald, Wendell said. His voice was an executioner's iron axe dragged across stone. Well, you been staying busy, old friend? Side jobs, here and there. Wendell swung his massive head around to regard Gerald once more. The gargoyle looked diminutive in the flames of red light burning in those otherwise empty eye sockets. Last I heard, Gerald, you had run into some trouble with the Comic Balance Council of Idiots. Liam assumed that was the Wendigo's less charitable name for the Karmic Discipline Committee. Ah, yes. Well, there was some trouble over some spell work gone wrong with an Entroni Jandiex Lars named Rolf the Omnipotent, but all cleared up now. I heard it involved an Angar moth, specifically its dung, Wendell said, the light of his eyes growing. Was that scraping sound in the back of the creature's throat the beginnings of a laugh? Gerald reached up to scratch the scales on the back of his neck. Word does get around. And a Zandefisard metamosaic arg. A terrible gurgling sound emerged from the Wendigo's throat that Liam realized was indeed laughter. Wendell swung one of his heavy claws at Gerald as if to pat him on the back. Gerald failed to move quickly enough, and the force of the contact threw him against the opposite wall. Wendell didn't let Gerald recover, and instead pressed one of those nails into Gerald's chest. Even if it was meant to be affectionate, with those long, sharp claws, it looked more like a threat. Maybe it was. Gerald, you always were a slippery one. Oh, yes, well, it's funny how these things get exaggerated. Gerald swallowed, looking down at the claw and patting it with a forced affection. Wendell withdrew it and returned to sniffing the air. But like I said, I'm free as a bird now, living the life, Gerald said, straightening out one of his wings from being smashed against the wall and moving back into the field of view of the Wendigo. So, what brings you so far south, a long way from the Great Lakes and the old haunts of the Algonquin? Wendell froze. Liam was certain that the flame-filled eyes were boring through the broom closet door to look right at him. The Wendigo's arms lifted, the nails clacking against the slats of the broom closet, as if probing for the way to open it. Mitchell's shaking body went rigid against Liam. Freelancing, Wendell said with another chuckle. Big ingress is coming, Gerald. Devils and demons from the other side. They needed some local monsters who knew the landscape to help with guard duty. With a clomp of a hoof, the Wendigo spun back around on Gerald, backing the smaller demon into the corner with an outstretched nail again. Wendell jabbed another long spike at the double doors leading to the occult room. I'm here to guard what's on the other side of those doors, which makes me wonder, what's a lower-level demon just off probation like you doing down here? Gerald gulped. Mitchell gulped. Liam gulped. Well, certainly enjoying the freedom that comes with being off probation, Gerald said with a click of his heels and the beginnings of what looked like a very stiff jig. Nothing like the smell of freedom, right? Second only to the smell of fresh and tender flesh, Wendell said, that deep rumble of his laugh returning. Human flesh. I heard Pazuzu and Lamashti were both in on this one, Gerald said, speaking up and pressing flat the spikes on his head. Imagine those two putting aside their differences. Must be a big prize in store. You know, those old gods and their egos. Yes, Wendell said. Liam was unable to tell if the snort the Wendigo made was one of derision or another to test the air for their scent. Big, juicy rewards for a monster who picks the right side. This could be the big one, Gerald. The one we've been waiting for. Some of us will feed like we haven't in 400 years. The thought of feeding definitely turned the Wendigo back to the broom closet. Gerald, you or something near you smells of humans, Gerald. Young humans. Liam couldn't breathe as the red eyes grew closer, sending lines of red light over Mitchell's petrified face and illuminating the broom handles leaning up against the wall. Walls that pressed so close, offering nowhere to go, no escape. Yes, well, it's hard to avoid them in a place like this, Gerald said, his wings flapping rapidly now as he rose up over one of Wendell's shoulders, then the other. They're just all over, young, fresh, and tasty. Smell sort of sticks to one, doesn't it? I imagine it must be hard doing guard duty down here for the big honchos without eating their little slaves. Yes, but if any come snooping, I'm allowed to make an appetizer of them, Wendell said, with a slaver and a sandpapery sound of a dry tongue rubbing against bare bone. Oh my, Gerald said. What a treat. This job certainly has its benefits, doesn't it? The handle on the broom closet began to turn. Gerald's voice was cracking, his wings beating furiously now, as if the demon had downed a gallon of espresso and was turning into a hummingbird. Must be nice, my tea kettle friend. Am I right? Gerald was right alongside the Wendigo now, nudging him with his elbow, taking a page out of Mitchell's book with his ridiculous nudges and winks. The squeaking of the doorknob stopped. The Wendigo let out a gust of hot, stinking carrion breath. What did you call me? Oh, Gerald said, forcing a laugh. Tea kettler, you know? It's what those old trappers and loggers in the Ontario province would call Wendigos, right? Such a charming local patois. The light shifted again as the Wendigo spun back around. He caught Gerald in his glare. The beams from the Wendigo's eye sockets flared, bright as spotlights. Tea kettlers are imps, little sniveling gremlins. They are no Wendigos. Oh, so sorry, Wendell. Gerald flapped backward, his hands up, his tail curling protectively about his midsection. He grabbed the tail in his hand, wringing it nervously. Silly me. I'm always confusing my Great Lake demons. It's just an innocent slip-up between friends. You're still my favorite hide-behind. Hide-behind? I know. Only you can call each other hide-behinds, but I have a hide-behind friend, and he says it's all right if I do, Gerald said, waving his hand. I'm down like that, you know? No, I don't know. Neither do you, Gerald. Hide-behinds are not Wendigos either. They're cowardly little wisps. Gerald ducked a swing from Wendell's claws, surprisingly nimble for a rotund demon with undersized wings. He strategically floated back down the corridor, leading the Wendigo away from the broom closet. Oh, well, you'll just have to excuse me, Wendell. I guess I'm not as up on what you New World demons call yourselves. You'll have to enlighten me. I don't want to offend any more roper eels I might come across. Roper eels? Those little weaklings. Those are not the same as Wendigos either. Wendell punched through the ceiling, his claws tearing down plaster and twisting pipes as he retracted them. Ceiling tiles came down in an avalanche, followed by a curtain of water as a water line ruptured. Gerald ducked, surprisingly evasive for a bowling ball with wings. His tone grew defensive. Really, Wendell, you are being oversensitive. All those minor beings, axe handles, Wendigos, they all do look so similar. Even Rumpos and Wibblewalks. I'm always confusing them. Minor beings? Rumpos? I'm no lazy corpse eater. I catch my prey. Gerald made a derisive sniff as he floated ever farther down the hall. No offense, old friend, but you could have fooled me with that breath. I'll tear your tail off and shove it. The location of said shoving was lost in the crash of a wall collapsing as the Wendigo charged and, presumably, missed. Gerald's voice could be heard farther down the hallway. Wendell, you must relax. It wasn't my intention to— More noise of crumbling walls, panting breath, and pounding hooves. The Wendigo continued to make grabs for Gerald, only to snatch support beams and LED candelabrums instead. Gerald blinked in and out of view, each time a little farther down the corridor. Really, Wendell? One demon to another, this is really unprofessional, he said, appearing alongside a candelabrum before Wendell tore it from its fixture. I'll show you unprofessional, you little dung rag. Wendell hurled the candelabrum at the spot where Gerald had rematerialized, only to snap out of existence again. The ruined cluster of lights and wiring crashed harmlessly against the wall. Gerald popped into view again even farther down the hall, saying something, likely some other demon world microaggression, that was lost amid the noise of Wendell's growls and his remodeling of the basement hallway. The Wendigo finally disappeared around the corner. Liam and Mitchell were left behind with nothing but the noise of spraying water, the echo of the Wendigo's enraged cries, and the continued thrum of dancing feet and pumping bass from the party above. Liam's heart was beating so hard his lungs could barely find space in his chest to breathe. He was dizzy. He couldn't believe any of this. It was all crazy. He moved to grab the doorknob. Wait, do we have to leave? Mitchell asked in a whimper, the bravado of General Leia Organa gone. We can't stay here. Yeah. Sorry, okay. Mitchell fumbled around under his gown, pulled out an inhaler, and took a hit. After putting it away, he nodded to Liam that he was ready. Liam swung open the door, ducking away from the ruptured pipes, even if he could not escape the sprays of water. Mitchell tripped over a mop bucket and spilled out onto the floor with a collection of cleaning supplies. Liam shushed him. Sorry, Mitchell said. I'm not used to wearing a gown in these situations. Liam refrained from any further fashion-related comments. It wasn't the time. Instead, he moved to the double doors, stopping before he opened them to look back at Mitchell. Mitchell's makeup was smeared and running from sweat. His hair, braids, earmuffs were askew. He abandoned a brief attempt to straighten them, instead ripping them off and tossing them into the closet. He took another deep breath and braced himself, saying with a renewed sense of resolve, Okay, I'm really ready now. Mitchell still sounded as if he were trying to convince himself. Liam knew he'd need a bit more encouragement. Don't worry, Liam said, reaching for the double doors. The handles turned. The doors were unlocked. Liam took it for a good sign. They had caught a break. Their luck was on the upswing, and his own nerves felt a little less jittery. He reassured Mitchell, It's all downhill from here. We're practically home free. Liam patted his partner in crime on the shoulder. There's a fire exit and some stairs up on the other side. We'll be out of here in no time. Chapter 18. Manticore. The room on the opposite side of the doors was still and quiet. This section of cellar was just as Liam remembered it. The footsteps and bass beats from the party above didn't penetrate here, although Liam was certain they should. It felt as if the room were somehow set apart from the reality of the rest of the house. Liam didn't like it. "Get in, get the books, get out," he said, part to Mitchell, part to himself. Liam let the doors click closed behind them, further shutting off the clamor of Wendell and his murderous pursuit of Gerald. The air inside was still and cool. It smelled of candle wax and a bit like an animal cage, but not seeing any more creatures, Liam supposed that this was just the scent of the Wendigo from outside seeping in. At least, he hoped that was the case. Liam didn't want to stay any longer than they had to. He looked around and found the window he and Jax had eavesdropped through on Wednesday. The sight of the world outside, even if it was the dark and shadowy underbrush of the overgrown side yard, was reassuring. Those were trees his father had once tended. Something about that thought was calming. Liam was also glad to see the door labeled exit leading out just next to the window. The stairs on the other side would be their escape from this occult dungeon and all its weirdness. Liam was a bit discouraged to see the sign, "Fire door, alarm will sound," adjacent to the exit sign. He had no doubt that the Frat brothers had a way to silence it, as they had used the door casually just 2 days prior, but if it had been rearmed, he'd worry about that later. Now Liam knew they needed to find the books and go. With all the music from DJ Max Spins, who would hear the fire alarm anyway? "This place is creepy," Mitchell said, staring at the pentagram in the center of the floor. The candles were no more than puddles of wax with the dark reddish-brown stains of wine, or blood, among them. Mitchell's normal curiosity was diminished to a fraction of itself. He didn't move closer to investigate the stains. Instead, he stuck close to Liam. Something about the muffled silence of the place was unnerving, but a howl from the outside, followed by a jarring thud, Wendell still raging after Gerald, reminded them both they needed to hurry. "Okay," Liam said, taking deep breaths. "Let's check the dais over there." "Are those skulls on the wall?" Mitchell asked. Liam looked up and shivered at the detail he had not noticed before. The walls were lined with skulls of small animals: cats, possums, squirrels, deer, even a few dogs. All likely roadkill victims, but it was eerie nonetheless. "Just stupid frat boys trying to play a cult." "Doesn't look like playing to me," Mitchell said, walking so close to Liam he stepped on his heels. They climbed up onto the dais. The LIES banner was still hanging up behind the 3 high-backed thrones. It wasn't hard to pick out the trapdoors built into its floor between the 2 lower thrones. What was surprising was that both trapdoors opened so easily. Their hinges were well-oiled and they were both unlocked. Inside waited 2 ancient-looking books. "Bingo," Liam said. "You'd think they'd have them locked up, especially if they're really valuable," Mitchell said. Liam paused, his hand stopping short of grabbing the first book. "Well, the library upstairs was locked, and there was a frickin' monster guarding this room. That was probably all the protections they thought they needed, right?" Liam wasn't sure why his statement sounded so much like a question. It wasn't like he was trying to convince himself of something. He looked to the pentagram in the middle of the floor, where he half expected Belphegor, Pazuzu, or Lamashtu to appear once again, in those stylish, custom-tailored designer clothes. But the room remained empty. Apparently those devils had more important things to attend to, like watching Tucker Carlson, spreading Ebola, attending a white supremacist rally, or whatever devils did in their spare time. "Yeah, I guess they felt they had this place pretty well guarded already," Mitchell said, his voice trailing off. Liam knew they needed to act. No more procrastinating. This was what they had come to do. "Oh, heck, come on, let's go." Liam reached down, snatched the first book, and handed it off to Mitchell. He grabbed the other, eased down the trapdoor lids, and broke for the fire door. "See? No problem," Liam said, his breath short. Halfway across the room, a sound stopped them. It was a purring, like a cat. The sound was coming from the far corner of the room. "What was that?" Mitchell asked, alarmed. "Just a cat," Liam said, turning, but as he did, he jumped. The corner where the noise came from was lost in shadow, but 2 large azure eyes were staring at them. The pupils were cat-like slits, even if the eyes were the size of softballs and hovering at the height of a fully grown man. They were set a hand's width apart. Combined with the purring noise and the swish of what sounded like a tail and the scritch-scritch of claws on the stone floor, Liam could make out something large and feline. "I'm sure it's someone's house cat," Liam said, not sure why all his statements kept coming out like questions. "Just a really big house cat." Liam's assurances were not having the intended calming effect on Mitchell or himself. The two of them took a few more steps backward toward the door. Each of them held the thick books up to their chest as if to protect themselves, but as they did, the cat-like thing stepped forward, the soft flap of something leather unfurling behind it. The creature came out of the shadows and into the light. It took Liam a moment to make sense of what he was seeing. It was indeed feline-like, lean and sinewy, but far more leopard than lion. The skin was red and covered in a thin sheen of golden hairs. The face was leonine, but also, weirdly and disturbingly, human-like. The creature's tail was segmented and arched, with a long spike mounted on the end, like a giant scorpion. The tail curled up to strike. It was flanked on either side by two enormous dragon wings. When it smiled, it revealed 3, 4, 5, Liam stopped counting after 6, rows of shark's teeth. "Liam?" Mitchell's voice broke as the creature stalked forward, the wings unfolding to such a span that their tips touched opposite walls. "That's not a house cat." I'm sure it's just Gerald, transformed to protect us," Liam said with a gulp. Liam willed his feet to take 1, then 2 more steps toward the fire door. Much to his terror, the giant beast continued to follow them. "It's you, Gerald, right? You're taking a different shape to protect us?" Yeah, Gerald. That sure is a fascinating mashup of morphology there. You've got a little something from everyone in the mammalia taxonomic class there, even a bit of arachnid from the arthropodophilum in there. It's very impressive. Creative, really. You really must have studied up for that one." The air popped next to Liam's head. Floating over his shoulder, flapping his wings, was Gerald. "Nope, I'm right here. That's definitely not me. That's definitely a manticore." "That's the worst news ever," Liam said. The manticore in question dropped its jaw wide open, revealing a long tunnel of spiraling teeth with too many rows to count. "Oh, very craniate, huh?" Mitchell squeaked, moving closer to Liam. Liam was disturbed that Gerald did the same. The manticore's grin turned to a full, toothy rictus of hungry delight. It folded its wings back into sharp angles to streamline itself. The scorpion tail angled into a striking position. The monster bent its legs, ready to spring. But just then, the double doors burst open, flying off their hinges as the frame splintered. Wendell the Wendigo came crashing in. "Gerald, you little..." But Wendell didn't finish. Whatever threat he intended to make was drowned out by the loud screech of the manticore as it arched its back at this final intrusion, apparently one too many. The manticore and its mishmash of taxonomic morphology leapt to attack the Wendigo. Wendell made some sort of protest that he was not the intruder, but his remarks were cut off. The manticore wasn't making distinctions. Both creatures blurred into a violent tumble of antlers, claws, and teeth, tangling together, slashing and swiping. "And that is our cue to exit," Gerald said, sweeping his arms like a theater usher toward the emergency exit. Liam and Mitchell needed no further encouragement. They hurled themselves at the exit, spellbooks tucked under their arms. Liam smashed down the handle and pushed through the door. The siren of the fire alarm was quaint in comparison to the roar of the monsters and the blasting music from Max Spin's speakers. No one noticed. Even the flashing emergency lights looked to be part of the DJ effects. But even though the partygoers didn't realize the flashes were from the alarm and not strobe lights, Jax must have. Max Spins cut the music and the laser show. Now it was just the fire alarm blaring and the emergency lights flickering as Liam and Mitchell ran around the corner of the frat house and into the front yard. The initial boos from the partygoers at the abrupt stop to the show faded as the alarm blared. The house began to disgorge its occupants. Gerald turned himself into a raven, flapping overhead. Most of the revelers crowding into the front yard were still carrying their solo cups in one hand while recording the events with their phones in the other. Liam and Mitchell dodged and weaved through the students. Getting lost amid their numbers seemed like a good idea. "Hurry! He's coming!" Gerald croaked in a raven-like voice. The manticore flew up into the night sky, danced across the rooftop of the frat house, then leapt to the pitched roof of Omega Chi Sigma next door. Wendell was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps he had proved no match. The manticore's movements were smooth, graceful, and quick. It slid through the darkness with the fluidity of spilled ink. Distracted as they were, none of the revelers noticed the monster curl behind a brick chimney, cleverly hiding itself from view as it scanned the crowd. "Come on," Liam managed to say, pulling Mitchell up from where he had stumbled. "I'm trying," Mitchell said between puffs. But with shorter legs and a long gown, Mitchell could only follow so fast. Liam was beginning to question the wisdom of not including, much less consulting, Jeannie and Esmeralda in regard to this plan. Then Liam realized plan was a strong word for the mess this was degenerating into. He really had no idea what to do next or where to go, only that they needed to run, and run fast.